I'm Rob Chapman.
Hey, and I'm the captain.
Welcome to Andertons.co.uk, home of tone
yes,
in the UK.
Mi casa su casa. Come in. This video is going to be, hopefully, something super informative where we compare the all-time biggest selling, currently most popular ever guitar amplifier, probably in the history of guitar kind, to what we think in 2020, I say we, I'm sort of collectively talking the Andertons family, we think in 2020, probably the amp that's most likely to give Katana a bit of a run for its money.
Imagine if they could run, and it was for money.
For money. Would bring a whole new meaning to like roadies, wouldn't
This
it?
would be like a
They'd be out of
amp.
work immediately, roadies, because you just say to the amp, wouldn't you, here's £5, run over there.
Oh,
anyway,
man.
look, so Katana MkII came out last year. Katana MkI, completely sold in quantities I don't think any guitar amp brand has ever sold before. Dominated the kind of the market for these sort of affordable solid state amplifiers, and also as well gave a very welcome return to quite an old school approach to making guitar amplifiers. Gone was the sort of the Class D power section that people were using for a long time in these kind of amplifiers, with a more conventional Class AB solid state output section. Gone was this idea of multi-menu modeling, and replaced with a relatively straightforward, simple panel. And what you got was a great value, easy to use guitar amplifier that people really like the sound of. Now, most brands are still probably going down the route that Fender have gone with Mustang GTX, which is a more digital modeling approach to getting guitar sounds. But what we've got on GTX for 2020 is upgraded power sections, collaborations with Celestion on the speakers, nicer cabinetry.
It looks good.
Yeah. And of course, as will always happen with technology, is another progression and advancement in the way that modeling amplifiers can work. We've got Rob sat over there. Rob obviously is very, very familiar with Katana. Hasn't heard GTX before, but I just want to say now, there is no preference from Andertons. It's, you know, we're happy if you buy Katana, we're happy if you buy GTX, we're happy if you buy something completely different as well. So this, if there's any opinions in this video, they're entirely guided by just a personal opinion. There's no secret agenda. I suppose just to get the sort of the basic overview of features compared before we dive into the sounds. They're both 100 watts and both 1x12 combos, albeit that the technology used for the power section is a little different, so Class AB versus Class D here. This does mean that the GTX is quite a lot lighter than the Katana. The cabinet size, as you can see, is marginally bigger on the GTX, but they're not dissimilar proportions. The Katana ships without its foot switch and currently sells for £319, and you pay £89 for the optional foot switch. GTX100 is £419, so it's £100 more.
But it comes with the foot switch.
Yes, but the foot switch is with it. So they're kind of ballpark the same. Mustang GTX is all the digital things that you'd expect it to be. So it does Bluetooth, it does Wi-Fi, it does modeling, etc. Katana...
Is it an Insta-model?
Yes. Katana is quite basic like that. So it has a USB input that has an editor where you can access additional effects and stuff like that, but it doesn't do Bluetooth or anything like that. XLR outputs on the GTX, regular jack outputs on the Katana. However, let me just see, what else have we got? We've got effects, send and return. We've actually got stereo effects, send and return on the GTX. We've got send and return on the 100. We've also got this option on the Katana to do a stereo expand. So it's got a special mode where if you buy two of them, one works as like a stereo slave to this one, which is pretty cool. We've also got power amp inputs here. But look, so you can kind of see, probably on features alone, you can kind of see why we're all a bit impressed with GTX, because it looks like a very feature-rich amplifier. But does it sound as good?
Well, that's the thing. And so in, you know, the difficult task of ascertaining which one sounds gooder, I decided to use a guitar that I'm more familiar with, hence the Chapman. And just first glances, I have to say, you know, I'm a big fan of the Katana. Hello, Pete. Sorry, I just touched my microphone. Is it okay if I... Okay, good. This looks so much like a real amp. The beautiful, I'm imagining, wooden chassis. They've even put a lot of attention, I can tell, into the grill cloth. It's like a shiny black fishnet. It looks awesome, and it reminds me a lot of just like a classic Fender amplifier. So immediately my old school kind of vibe appeals to the look of the Fender, although familiarity makes me lean to the Boss. But we're going to find out when we open them up.
Absolutely. So on the Boss, as you guys probably know, you have 4 different preamp modes: clean, crunch, lead, brown. Each of those has a variation, so 8 of those, plus an acoustic guitar mode. The Fender just is different in the Fender just has lots and lots of different actual amp models, and they will either be quite explicit about what they've modeled. So if it's a Fender amp, it'll be quite explicit, and if it's a copy of someone else's amplifier or a model of someone else,
tread plate.
Yes, it'll give us an idea. So we can very quickly on the Boss go for a clean tone.
May I ask you a question, please, Lee?
Yes.
I know you can plug the Boss into a computer and then alter patches and check. Can you do that on the Fender?
Yes, and you can do that. In fact, on the Fender, it's all via Bluetooth. But it's the Fender Fender, I don't know, do you know, I was going to say Fuse, but I don't think it's called Fuse anymore. But there's one of those really nice looking apps where you see amps and pedals, and it's very easy to navigate and use.
That's good.
It's also Wi-Fi. So you can connect this to your home's Wi-Fi, and what it will automatically do, which is kind of clever every time you switch it on, is check that it's got the latest firmware.
That's good.
Which is kind of cool, isn't it? Right, so look, I'm going to start with the BOSS Katana on its clean mode with kind of the gain and the volume turned down a little bit. We're in 100 watt mode, just because that's what the GTX will be in. And we've just got reverb and all the EQ flat, and Rob, you can just guide me from there.
Okay, so which amp model are you going to be in?
Clean.
Okay, so, well, let's just see how it sounds.
I can elect to have the variation if you want it
May
to.
I have some of your volume? It's lovely and jangly.
Would you like to hear the variation?
Yes, let me hear the variation.
Between the variation?
I like the second one.
The second one, okay.
Yeah, I thought that was quite nice.
Do you want me to smiley face the EQ a bit, or just leave it as it is?
I'm happy with it as it is.
Fine. Okay, so that's we have got delays and choruses and stuff like that to add in, but we're not at the moment. We're just leaving the reverb. We've got the green reverb, which is your favourite reverb for clean, isn't it? So there you are. That's what that sounds like. If I jump over to the Fender, now the Fender's first preset is modelled around a twin reverb. Probably Fender's most famous guitar amplifier. Some might argue it's a deluxe or a Bassman, but probably the twin. And that is a big 100 watt sounding clean amplifier, and everything is now programmed in. So you actually have to look at the little panel to see where things like the tone controls are set to. But this has got quite a smiley face EQ. So we've got treble boosted, bass boosted, mid-range flat, and it's clean. So here we go.
I really like the reverb. It sounds like a room, which is really pleasant.
It's modelled on the reverb that would have been in the twin.
Right, it's really nice sounding.
Should we just jump between the two and talk about responsiveness and things like that? So, okay, so back to the Katana.
it's a lot more present in the room.
Yeah.
It's really in your face, kind of brighter and more in the room.
And back to the Fender again.
It's a more forgiving sound, so it feels nicer to play, but it isn't so much, you know, presence but you could probably add presence and brighten it to make it more it's less higher mid.
Yeah. Now both of these are open-backed combos here, so I'm actually sitting behind them is probably the next best place to be, other than sitting in front of them in terms of. So I'm probably not hearing a dissimilar sound to Rob. I kind of always hear with digital power sections versus AB sections. You called it forgiving on that. I hear more of an immediacy on the Boss, whereas as you say, it's the
sag.
The Fender just sounds like it's like, here's my guitar signal. I'll just work out how to make it sound like a Fender Twin, and that might just take me a millionth of a second to do it. And here we are, sounding like a Fender Twin. Whereas the Katana just perhaps not better or worse, just a different feel, isn't it?
Yeah.
So anyway, so look, what we have got on the GTX are lots of different Fender models. So if I just switch through, so we've got, here we go. So that was our twin reverb. We've got a 65 deluxe reverb now.
That sounds like an amp in a live room, and you're about 30 meters away from the live room, and it's going.
I can change the reverb now. For those of you that aren't familiar with Fender amplifiers, we've gone from the Twin, which is the 100-watt one, down to the Deluxe Reverb, which was the 20-watt one, which is why you can hear that little bit more breakup. And then we're going to go down to the Princeton, which is the 10-watt one, so even more breakup.
So I've just tapped out the pickups just to hear it kind of. It's nice. It's got a lot of low end though.
Yeah. It's interesting. I always find with the way Fender have designed this amplifier, and it's reminiscent of a lot of amps that go after the sort of the more digital modeling thing. It always feels to me like you can look at the BOSS Katana, you've never used one before, but you've used other guitar amplifiers, and it's pretty obvious what knobs you've got to do to get a sound that you want to use. Anything like this, there's always an element of just going, oh, I better just take 10 minutes here to work out how this particular amp operates here. So yeah, it's not quite as hands-on easy to use, but it's not difficult to use.
The equivalent of this sound in the Katana would be if you put it on the crunch, put the gain almost off.
Yeah. And
then a bit more
reverb. Or we could gain up the clean tone a little bit. Yeah. So we'll go back to that in a minute. Let's just go back to the Princeton. Sorry, this is now the Princeton, which is the smallest of the Fender, one of the smaller ones.
Sounds. It sounds quite a lot like a Princeton.
Yeah, and it's a good little amp. I suppose probably the other. I mean, Fender have made so many famous amplifiers for the year, but the one that probably started it all, and I think the one that you could argue, credited the whole Marshall revolution, and was the Fender Bassman. It was the early Marshall amplifiers were pretty much modified Bassman circuits. So here's a Bassman amp. So so here we go. Yeah.
that sound.
So there we are. Look, so I think that's a good segue now to kind of go back over to the Katana and maybe go over to one of the crunchier modes. And this is where, again, you'll dial in the gain to taste, and we'll perhaps move on to some of the other amp models that are in the GTX that perhaps would be traditionally a bit gainier. So I think one of the things that when Pete and I have looked at the Mustang range in general, so this is even predecessors to GTX, where they always do their own amps well. I think that the sort of the jury was historically out on whether they did other people's amps well or as well. So let's jump up back over here and let's play with the Katana now on its crunch mode. And Rob, you tell me how you want.
So it's very loud, so back off the volume.
Okay, volume is...
And then where's the gain set?
9 o'clock.
Turn the gain off.
Off.
Yeah. I like that sound. I like that sound when it's in a live room with a bit more volume.
I was sort of half paying attention as I programmed this up for the next one. Let's I think Katana's can't take anything away from this amplifier. It's got some great tones in it. But let's start winding the gain in a bit.
Just put it halfway up.
Halfway.
Because,
yeah.
So what I've done is I've tapped the pickups now. Do you back off the treble and a bit of the presence?
Yes. Yes and yes. So good sound. I mean, here's 3/4 of the gain on the crunch mode.
It's that kind of...
So that we're going to jump back over here now. We could, of course, you could add a boost pedal in front of that from the internal effects on here if you wanted to gain it up a bit more, as you can also on the Fender.
And there are the two different kinds of crunch.
Yeah, two different variations. Let's just do quick. So that was the first one. A little bit more sparkly, isn't it, the other one? So if we jump back over to the Fender now, I've selected, and we may have to choose a different one if this isn't the best comparison here. I've selected an amplifier model called 60s British. So I'm guessing we're talking early Marshall. I don't think it's Vox.
Like a JTM.
Yeah, but we'll find out as soon as you strum your first chord. Again, I've got the same... I don't know if our overhead cam will catch this, but I obviously can adjust all the amp settings on here, just like a normal amplifier, but I've got to kind of look at this panel to see where the other ones are set. But here we go, look, so here's gain at, say, a third of the way round, So let's gain that up a bit more.
Bit dark and a bit muddy.
Yeah, I mean, I can brighten it. That's probably something to do with the era of Marshall in the sense of, but I've got a little bit more gain. I can put some additional treble in, maybe take some bass out of it. Let's see how you sound now. Should we see if 70s British just gives us a smidgen more something?
Well, I am from the 70s.
This is true. So what does that sound like? Right, so I'm just going to literally go from that 70s British sound over to the sort of the cranked up crunch tone on the Katana. So here we start with Katana. And Fender.
The running theme is that the Fender is much darker, much more distant sounding, and the Katana is very much more present in the room. If I had to gig at the moment, that would be lost, and that would be really present.
It's the presence, isn't it? It's that mid-range kind of just.
Can't you crank the presence on that?
Well, let's see what we can do. I can do anything you like.
Because I don't want to come across like a Katana fanboy.
No, but look.
But Matt, it is very apparent that this is dark and this is really in the.
Yeah, I mean, Katana absolutely is the dominant amp in terms of sales figures. It's just that this one, for the last 3 years, it's honestly been like 90-95% of people have bought Katana, and all the other brands have chased after the other 10%.
Yeah.
This year it kind of feels like Fender are making some headway. We've almost always sold out of GTX, so it's still not the kind of numbers we're doing on Katana, but it's the first. It feels to me like it's the first one that's. So I just thought it would be an interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've turned the mid-range and the presence right up. So let's.
love the sound.
It's made a big difference to... But
Yeah.
what we've got here is the Katana with its mid-range like this,
Yeah.
and the Fender with the mid-range and the presence like,
Yeah,
whoa.
I would almost back off the high end on the Boss, which is what I do a lot of.
Yeah.
And I would say this is being pushed into an area where it's not quite comfortable having that much high end in the mix.
It's certainly...
But it sounds a lot better.
Yeah, it's certainly... You've got that sense that would be a more of a gigging tone, wouldn't it, now, with those kind of frequencies. Anyway... Right, next we are going to go round onto the lead setting on the Katana, and then what amp sounds are in here that might be similar. So that's that. I have literally chosen a supersonic, and you haven't even heard it yet, so it might be completely inappropriate.
Has it got a machete inside?
No, supersonic's probably the closest, but let's give it a try.
Sounds great.
I've turned it down, that would be why.
That sounds like it needs to be drop tuned.
I changed the amp model whilst you were playing to 90s American, which I'm guessing is
Tread plate.
boogie, and it scooped all the mid-range out. So I'm just kind of dialing a little bit of it back in. I don't know. Look, man, it's just there's tons and tons of different amp models in here, so you've really got to audition them all and find the one you like the best. But I think that's roughly where the Katana's trying to sit, with that sort of metal tone on the lead setting. We'll now switch between, I said, the lead setting that Rob had before and the 90s American amplifier that's on the
and then we'll go
GTX.
brown sound and one of the
and we'll find something else in there that's brown, I suppose. More bass end on this from where I'm sitting. Should I just compensate, or do you not like the bass end?
Well, it's not a guitar's job to have a lot of bass end, but I'll put some more bass in and see what happens.
Let's see if I can voice this, because I don't like.
Let me give an honest opinion. This sounds like what you would want to hear if you were playing on your own at home.
Yeah.
This sounds like the sound you would need if you were in a band. And I think that's the difference.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you, and I know that'll be potentially a difficult thing to understand what Rob's talking about if you've not played much in a band. because absolutely what the GTX is doing, it's nailing the bedroom tones, isn't it?
It's
and it's not a
100%.
volume thing. I mean, it's
No.
nailing the bedroom tones loud, but I think Rob's right. Is sometimes that broadness of tone, that fullness of tone, just ends up being difficult to cut across with in a band mix. Whereas that more focused tone that maybe you're getting out of the Katana just feels like...
Yeah, because what I'm saying is definitely not that this doesn't sound good. This does sound really nice. But in a mix, I think with a band, you'd lose that. And I think obviously you don't lose that.
I mean, I'm inclined to sort of go, if I was buying this amplifier to perhaps predominantly use at home, or or maybe the band you're in. Again, I think if you perhaps talk about maybe your band is more of a trio, it's less of an issue about having an amp that's maybe sat in that focus thing. Maybe it's just like a blues band or something where the guitar is the predominant. That it's all about the guitar. I don't think it would be so much of a problem. It feels to me like in a busier, more complex band, more technical band or whatever, you could see why that might be an issue. No, I can see you disagreeing.
Well, I do. But that only because the frequencies at which so far during this demonstration this is giving are very low end areas that you don't need in an electric guitar. You have a bassist, you have a kick drum, you have an audience soaking up the stage, soaking up all that low end, and you need the high mid. You need mid. Yeah, I mean, and that is giving all the mid, and you can dial it in. But when you did, it kind of sounded like it wasn't happy with having that amount of mid and high end in it. Yeah, it sounds great, and I would definitely use one at home or in a green room or something. I mean, I see when I'm at Andertons and we're doing demos and stuff, I gravitate towards amplifiers with a really big bass end on them because I just like that tone. He likes big bass ends, and cannot lie. I know I'm sitting behind it here, but I'm sort of sitting there going, so far on balance, I'm sort of drawn generally towards the sounds that I can hear coming out of GTX. Yeah, over Katana. If you said to me, "Oh, Rob, quick, grab an amp, we're going to do a demo of a pedal," I'd grab that one. Yeah. Because I know it's unforgiving, digital imagination. Do you mean forgiving? Forgiving, yes. It's a really great digital reenactment of an amplifier in a live room mic'd up with an SM7B. That's an amp. Yeah. So sometimes, like, if you said, "Shall we use a JCM800?" I'd be like, "No," because it's going to be really loud and really bright and horrible in a demo room doing a thing. But on a stage, you need that loud, bright, unforgiving punch to cut through the audience and sever some heads. Well, look, so we've got one more sound on the Katana, which is the brown sound. I'll cycle through some different amp sounds on the GTX. Well, do you want to have a little play from behind the viral barrier of amps? No, I mean I've played both these amplifiers, and as I said, my preference again with amplifiers is always to have a big Fendery sounding clean amplifier and then enjoy using pedals with it to get a sound. So in my mind, I'm already sort of a bit of a convertee to the GTX. I'm not my biggest criticism of the GTX, and actually it's probably not really a criticism of GTX, it's more just what I love about what BOSS has done is the user interface. Yeah, really so even now I'm sort of I'm sort of going through it going, and I'm reasonably familiar. I mean, I'm not as familiar as an actual owner would be if someone had this for, a couple of months or whatever, but I do like that. But hey, it'd be great if Fender just made a Bassman that was digital. Well, what Fender have done, which I think is just genius, but it's a completely different price point to Katana, is I love what they've done with their Tone Master amps. So have you tried either the Deluxe or the Twin they've done? No, mate. So, I mean, you guys might have seen this on YouTube already, but so what Fender have done with their top of the range digital stuff is just gone, let's just make a Fender Twin. So let's literally, it's like, it looks exactly like a Fender Twin. That's great. The knobs on it are exactly like a Fender Twin. It's got 2 channels because that's what they always have, but they haven't gone, let's add channel switching in. No, good. Like, that's what they should be doing. So. And they've replaced the spring reverb with all the processing powers, and you sit and you play this amplifier and you sit there going, I'm playing a Twin.
the end. I'm playing a twin. It's just half the price and like a tenth of the weight.
That's how it should be.
Yeah.
That's really how it should be.
That for me is almost like you've got GTX here going quite complex level of sophistication here, and therefore the interface is a little bit complex. You've got Katana going, I'm going to give you some stuff, but I'm going to make it easy to do. And then you've got Tone Master just going, no. It's just being that amp from 1965 and that's it, but just digitally. Anyway, look, we talked too much. So final bit then, we've got brown sound on the Katana, variation 1, EQ, a little bit of extra bass, a little bit less treble, mid-range in the middle, and just a smidgen of reverb. So let's have a little listen to that. And then the Fender, we've elected 80s British as the amp model.
This needs more gain.
More gain. There is no more gain on that particular amplifier. That is, so we'd have to
more
find,
Freeman.
We'd have to find another amp. Let's see what we've got here. Anything there? Try it now.
Good. When you swap between the two, it doesn't feel nice because it makes the differences so apparent that it just feels weird. If you sit on one for a while, it begins to sound nice, and then suddenly it sounds normal.
That because we've said that so many times in these A/B tests. It's like you have to get an amp, and you have to let your ears adjust, and you have to let your natural playing style just go, okay, that's how I get that amp to sound good. And you can't just switch to another one without going through that little 10-20 second thing again just to go, oh yeah, I completely understand what you're saying there. I'm trying to think if there's anything. I suppose the other feature on the Fender which I really like is if you have the foot switch, which comes free with the 100, but you have to buy as an optional extra for the smaller one of these, the 50. But if you have the foot switch, you've got a looper as well built into this. So you can loop with one sound and then change to another sound, so the underlying loop stays on the first tone and then the blah blah blah.
How much more would you need to pay to get like just a good, decent Fender valve combo? What's the most affordable good? I'm using you as a personal shopper, but the first affordable good Fender valve combo, something like.
I mean, there are some fantastic sounding small Fender combos and things like the Fender Blues Junior or the Bass Breaker 15.
Well, like how much is the Breaker 15?
It's about 500, I think. I want to say 500-ish. The one for me that you'd immediately look at and go, well, what do you just see in like rehearsal rooms and pubs and clubs sort of all around the world is the Hot Rod Deluxe, which is the sort of the 40 watt kind of the next one.
That's a lot more though, isn't it?
That's up in the sort of £700 to £800 bracket. So it's like twice the price of one of these.
Like, if you were going to spend, 400 quid on that, you loved Fender, surely, you're probably going to have some pedals anyway.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's two different customers, isn't it? I think you know, there's an element. This is super lightweight.
Yeah.
This is for someone that is just like going, oh, I'm really interested in like layering all these different effects up here. I want to plug it into my computer and do some recording. I want to jam to backing tracks through it. I mean, that's not just GTX. I mean, to a certain degree, that's kind of Katana as well, and certainly all of these genre amplifiers are aiming at maybe. Do you know that I think we all agree that the guitarist life journey is learn to start playing on something pretty basic and affordable. Get excited about what's all this other stuff, what a different amps sound and what do different pedals do. So you gravitate towards one of these because it's just got like, or one of these because it's got loads of stuff in it. And then you kind of find your sound. Yeah, you find your things that make you get excited, and then you go and buy like the Valve analogy versions of those things, and you end up with your AC30 or your JCM800 or whatever with the pedals that you want with it. So I just think these amplifiers are kind of like, that's where you are on the journey with these sort of amps. I should say again, if we didn't say it before, you know, obviously every piece of material every piece of advertising material or sponsored video that BOSS do will tell you that Katana is best, and likewise Fender will do the same for Mustang, and likewise every brand will do the same. I will say, as far as Andertons is concerned, we're a big BOSS dealer, we're a big Fender dealer. It makes no bones to me whether all we want you to do is buy the one that you're going to enjoy the most. And bizarrely, of course, we're competing in a different. We don't mind whether you buy the BOSS or the Fender, but what we would like you to do is buy it from Andertons rather than from one of our competitors. But even that, I appreciate, you know, so much of our audience doesn't live anywhere near Andertons, let alone in the UK.
Well, you ship the world, don't you?
Yeah, but not on stuff like this. I think, you know, my expectation is if you live in Australia or whatever, you know, you go and find an Australian dealer to sell you one of these. And hopefully this video has helped. But as you can see, I think band players are like Rob, are probably drawn to Katana, and players that maybe are more interested in delving into, you know, maybe they want to do something with the USB side of it, maybe they want to do something like discover lots of different amp models and effects, and maybe they're just playing more solo stuff.
Well, you know what? There's no band playing at the moment because the whole plague thing. There's no gigs, no touring. So
these two are definitely the two leaders, though, I think, in this in that sort of affordable, sort of solid statey
forget
world.
Marshall and Vox.
Well, kind of.
Good.
I mean, at the moment you've got Code from Marshall, which is got to be coming up for 4 years old in terms of tech, so that's quite old. Vox, same. I mean, again, so the only guys that have really done anything particularly new is Blackstar with their Silverline, which I thought was pretty good as well, but it's quite a lot dearer than either of these. So again, I don't know. For me, it's one of these two, and then the rest is up to the player.
Well, there you go. I hope you've enjoyed this 4-hour demonstration of which amp is best.
Yeah, there we go. Right, onwards and upwards. I think we need to get some blindfolds on for the next video, Rob.
Oh God. Bye.
Bye.